3. Protect black youth. Protect black youth.
Protect black youth.
Okay, she's going in. What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. This is Simon and Akdi Movie Reviews, and today we are reviewing When They See Us, a 2019 crime drama 4-part miniseries that was released on Netflix. And this was Akdi's pick because she has been championing this movie or series since I've met her, right? Yeah. And we just recently finished it over like 2 days of watching it, binge watching it real quick. And I can say I really enjoyed it. There were parts that almost made me cry. I didn't cry, but I can say like overall, I highly recommend this for people to watch. But what did you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I love this series. The first time I watched, I think I was like in my last year in high school or my first year in university. And I remember this was on TV, I think, or something like that. And I remember just crying through like the last 2 episodes, and it just had a big impact on me, emotionally. Yeah. Because, it's a very sad story, very unjust story. So I love this movie.
Yeah, a part of me, like when this show came out, I was aware of it, but I think in 2019, like I was living in Tunisia at the time, and I was like just caught up in my own life, and I didn't even watch movies, TV. Like I was just up in the morning teaching, going to sleep, up teaching, going to sleep. So I didn't even have time to watch stuff. And I think also at that time, like I was just staying away from like, I don't know, content that would like make me angry or make me sad or upset. But now at this point where we're watching a lot of stuff, and also for Black History Month, I'm very glad we watched this because this is a very important story to tell.
Yeah, I think it's very important, and I also think the story is told well because it's just like a comprehensive look into these, men's life. Like we get to know their families, we get to see how the justice system worked against them, and all that stuff. So it's not just a sad story, but it's also an educative story.
Yeah, it's an educational story, I would agree. And I'm not saying it's perfect because I believe there are some faults in this as far as like the direction goes and like how the story is told. Like, I'll just get this out the way. I think the first episode is a bit rushed for me. I wish, they didn't just jump ahead to the crime like in the first 20 minutes and then we're thrown into the storm. I wish there was a bit more buildup and stuff like that. And, I always say background. I want background on characters. So I just wish there was a bit more, but that gets developed on later. I think the show really kicks in by episode 2 and episode 2, 3. And maybe I think the last episode with Korey is probably the most excellent. Yeah, that's what I would say. But any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, like the first episode is the building up of the story, right? We're introduced to what happened, and then the second one is like the trial scenes and stuff. And then finally at episode 3 and 4, we get to see actually like these kids' lives, both in prison and then like when they're back out as well. Right. So I really like the last 2 episodes. I think they are really good. Last episode is really good as well, but yeah. Let
me just give a background for anybody that doesn't know what we're talking about. This miniseries is about the Central Park jogger case where 5 black youth were basically charged with the crime of raping a white woman when they were totally innocent of the crime. They were just out in the park, having fun with their friends. And the real rapist came forward years later after many of them had already completed their prison sentence and confessed to the crime, and the men are now known as the Exonerated Five. And those guys, their names are Kevin Richardson, Antron McCray, Yusef Salaam, Raymond Santana, and Korey Wise as well. So all of them are, very famous in the black community for their advocacy about criminal justice reform and changing some of the laws that that make people go to jail for being even when they're innocent, right? And so, going back to the episodes now, I think my favorite episodes here are in ascending order. So my favorite is like 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. So what about you? Do you have any order, how you put them in?
Yeah, I would agree with that order.
No?
Yeah, I would agree. Because I mean, as it progresses, the story gets more compelling, and it just gets, just more intense.
Mm-hmm.
So that fits.
Yeah. Well, let's walk through, some of the episodes. We're just going to briefly cover the episodes. So in episode 1, it's just titled Part 1. 5 adolescents, Raymond, Kevin, Korey, Yusef, and Antron, are shown in their comfortable, familiar residential neighborhoods of Harlem, bantering with each other and playing. They're picked up by police in a sweep of the park after several assaults against other users that night, but it is not until later that the injured jogger is found and pressure increases. So basically at the beginning we see, I believe it was Kevin, right? He has a relationship with his father. That's Kevin, right?
Yeah, the small one.
Yeah, I mean, they're all small in the beginning, but we see, Kevin has a relationship with his dad. His father is in his life. His father is played by Michael K. Williams, who is a black acting legend. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago. Rest in peace to him. He has a good relationship with his father. I believe also Antron, we see he wants to be a trumpet player, and he has a good relationship with his sister, stuff like that. Yusef Salaam is he's more like the nerdy kid. They make him be out to be the nerdy kid. And his friend Korey Wise comes with him to the park, when he's on a date with a girl. And, he's sort of peer pressured into going. Mm-hmm. And they're just in the park, they're not totally nice kids, but they're being little assholes. You know what I mean?
And it's different. Korey and Yusef, they're more with the group,
mm-hmm.
and they are saying things to other people and stuff. But for example, Kevin, I feel he's just there because he's curious what the big kids are doing. He's just there just to see what is happening. Yeah, and he doesn't do anything. Really.
Yeah. Now they are doing some wild stuff in the park, people riding their bikes, and they're "Hey, look at you on the bike," just harassing people, but not violently. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're New Yorkers. They're just gonna say "fuck you" as a hello. That's them being nice.
Yeah, and they're teenagers.
And they're teenagers. They're not hurting anybody, but they do walk in the park and they do see some violence. They see somebody get beat up, and I was confused about that part. Was the guy getting beat up because of drugs or something? I didn't understand that.
I think the guy that they beat up said something to them before,
mm-hmm.
Earlier on,
mm-hmm.
or beat them up earlier on or
mm-hmm.
something. So it was a revenge thing.
Yeah. That's why I don't like episode 1 a bit, because that was a bit rushed. I wanted to understand, okay, why did I just see somebody get punched? And why did the kids just run away that was something so serious?
But the thing is, I don't remember exactly. I don't even know if any of the kids, any of the Central Park 5 were in that fight.
Yeah, they weren't. They were just watching.
Just looking,
they just saw somebody get beat up under a bridge in Central Park.
Yeah.
And then they ran away, right? So, they all, leave the park. And then, later on, the police come and they, say that, oh, we found this woman who was, beaten up and raped very badly here, and we're looking for the kids that were out in the park late at night, right? And the reports say that the kids were wilding and stuff like that, and then the police just sweep the city, right? And they're told to sweep the city by Linda Fairstein. I believe she was the district attorney or something like that. She was a New York City prosecutor who was covering this case of the woman who got raped in the park. And she convinces the police, send an army of blue downtown in Harlem to find out who did this to this woman, right? And so the police are just scouring the city, arresting every black person and brown person they can find. And, eventually the 5 boys get picked up because they were in the park that night.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that I just saw in her Wikipedia page for Linda Fairstein, she's supposed to be, working against women and children.
Mm-hmm.
And, it feels like she doesn't really like black children.
I think now is a good time to talk about her character. I believe Felicity Huffman did a good job on playing her and bringing this character to life. And, recently in my life, I've been thinking a lot about feminism, the relationship between men and women as as you know, the gender wars raging and stuff like that. And I've come generally to this conclusion, like all men want to hurt women, and women by any means necessary should do whatever it takes to fight the patriarchy, right? But I have to remember also that we need intersections when it comes to our feminism, right? And so it's not just believe all women and fight for tooth and nail, you know, to convict any man for any crime against a woman. And that's what I feel like Linda Fairstein's character is supposed to like represent here. The idea that, you know, white woman victimhood is the most serious thing, and by any means necessary, we will try to prosecute people that hurt women. But when we say women, what we really mean is white women, right? Mm-hmm. And Linda Fairstein also is operating in a space where history isn't involved in her analysis. So she doesn't have in her mind that, hey, maybe I'm perpetuating white supremacy and upholding systems of patriarchy by attacking black boys for raping a white woman, something that has constantly happened in this country, right? Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying? So, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I think I agree with you. Felicity Huffman did a good job of like portraying kind of like her obsession of trying to bring justice to this case when in reality, like, there wasn't any justice. But she was like kind of delusional in order to just make herself feel more comfortable in a way, I felt like. Mm-hmm. And I think also there was a side to her that also wanted to like become famous through this as well. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe it's not that much in the story in the series, but I feel like in reality that would also be part of it as well. Yeah,
because there's parts in here where she's talking to the chief prosecutor, the other woman, I forgot her name, but yeah, she's telling her, like, this is your opportunity to make a name. And this isn't about right or wrong anymore. It's about politics, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, she really starts hammering that point home. But I'd be interested to know what you think about this, because on one hand, I think she does want to be famous for writing crime novels or something. But I think she honestly believes that she's fighting for women, because she does tell the other woman, like, what about Patricia? She got left for dead. She got beat. She got raped. All these rapes happening in this city. Who's going to stand up for women? What do you think about that?
Like, I get her sentiment. And yeah, we should fight for, you know, women who got raped, who were abused to violence and stuff like that, but not at the same cost as, like, you know, arresting people who are innocent.
Children who are innocent.
Children, yeah. So, yeah, you have to, like, take everything with precaution, especially like when you're dealing with such a big crime that will affect these children for the rest of their lives. So I feel like she was just, honestly, I feel like, you know, after she started blaming these kids no matter what, and she was so convinced that, you know, they are the rapists and stuff like that, I feel like the feminism got out of like, of the scene, basically. Like, feminism left. And, yeah, that just sort of became a warpath on, you know, children of color.
Right, yeah. And I think, you know, if you're one of those people out there who wants to advocate for women and protect women and stuff like that, we also have to have, you know, history in mind. Like, there's no way you can look at these 5 boys, 14-year-old boys accused of raping a white woman, and not automatically think of, like, the Scottsboro boys. You know, the boys who were 9 boys who in a very similar way were accused of raping 9 white women with flimsy evidence, and they were sentenced to, like, life in prison back in, like, the 1920s, causing a major uproar in the country, and people seeing that this was a travesty of justice, right? Like, Linda Fairstein, you know, and other people like that who work in the criminal justice system need to understand our country has a history of treating black men, even black boys, wrongly, you know, through the history of lynching, through the history of false imprisonment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like the movie we saw earlier this year, Rosewood.
Yeah.
Like, a whole town got massacred because of a white woman blaming the wrong person.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's nothing more dangerous in America, at least, than white female victimhood, right? Because I'll never forget this from Afro-pessimism that I read. You know, white woman victimhood is constructed to be the perfect victim, to be the perfect bait to cause white backlash to black existence, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Because most people, it's like, especially white people, white men and white women, when they're faced with like two conflicting ideas, racism and protecting white womanhood, it's like they just go for
white womanhood.
And that and also like, you know, I said that her cause started to become like war against children of color, because she also constantly, also throughout the series, repeated like, you know, these boys were terrorizing the park.
They're animals.
And they were a wolf pack and this sort of thing, like that has nothing to do with the incident itself. So it was like she's just, you know, coming up with excuses that makes no sense.
Right. We're about to move on past Linda Fairstein, but I just want to read something real quick. So basically, Linda Fairstein, you know, when this show comes out, you know, people start protesting against her because she was like on the board of her school and she was like a major player in different avenues of social life and legal life. But, you know, she ended up resigning from the board of trustees from her alma mater, Vassar College. And that's because the students were like protesting against her. And Fairstein then wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal in 2019 after the show came out, saying Netflix's false story of the Central Park Five. And then she says the boys are not like totally innocent, and she starts citing other crimes they were convicted for, as if that proves they were also rapists as well. And she also asserts that Ava DuVernay, the producer and director of this film, like defamed her, like made her out to be the villain. You know what I mean? So Fairstein filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court of the Middle District of Florida against Netflix, DuVernay, and the series writers, right? And in 2021, Netflix requested for the case to be dismissed. The lawsuit had been partially allowed to go forward, while other scenes have been deemed not to be defamatory. And in June 4th, 2024, the case was settled, with Netflix donating $1 million to the Innocent Project, which I believe is started, you know, to help people, you know, who are convicted wrongly of crimes.
Isn't that Yusef Salaam's
I'm not exact. I don't think that might be Yusef Salaam. He might work for them, but I believe the Innocent Project was started by, remember that movie with Michael B. Jordan where he plays this lawyer?
Oh, yeah.
I believe it was started by that guy, the real lawyer, right? Okay. So yeah, Netflix donates $1 million to the Innocent Project and did not pay Fairstein anything.
Thank God. So like, how hard is it to accept that you did something wrong after wasting away these children's life in prison for like 14 years?
And by the way, I think there's nothing more honorable than admitting when you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, why can't you just say, hey, we got it wrong, I'm so sorry, and I'm here to make atonement?
Yeah, like, the only thing that made her a villain is herself, because if, you know, after this series came out, she could have come forward and said, like, I'm sorry to the families, and, you know, I played a part in prosecuting these children at the time wrongfully, and, you know, now I'm with them or something. Like, she could have did that, and she could have become a hero.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was a failure at many levels of the justice system, especially with the police who were abusing these boys. So let's move forward with the story. Basically, you know, Kevin, Antron, Yusef, and Korey and Raymond all get picked up, taken to the police station, and the police are basically like beating on them. You know, I mean, I think Antron gets hit in the head with like a police helmet, you know, while he's arrested in the park. And the other boys as well, you know, they're kept inside the holding cell for hours without food, without sleep. And the police are just badgering them with questions. Some even get slapped up and down. I believe Raymond or Korey gets slapped a few times and stuff like that. Right? And the police are saying, you can go home if you just talk to me, right? And they start playing like good cop, bad cop tactics with them. Like one cop comes in there and like yells at him, curses at him, calls him a sick rapist, beats on him. Then the good cop comes in and says, look, Raymond, I know you didn't do this. Only sick people do this, right? You're a good kid, Korey. You're a good kid, Antron. Kevin, you wouldn't do this, right? And so they start playing tricks on their minds, right? And also their parents are there sometimes. But their parents, like Raymond's dad, has to work. Yeah. So he comes in and says, like, I'm sorry, sir, you know, I can't come in because I have to catch my shift. I'm going to get fired. And, like, the other kids' parents are, like, not there, right? Because they're at work, they don't know where their kids are and stuff like that. So the police see that and say, yes, our lucky day. We get to badger these 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old kids until they talk to us. When legally they should have their parents there at least, or a lawyer there at best. What did you think about all of those scenes?
Yeah, it's kind of like, incredible to see how, police can manipulate you, because these are, kids. They're only kids, and they're scared, and they've been questioned for, I think 42 hours. So almost like they've been in the question room for 2 days. Mm-hmm. Just imagine that pressure on you. When I imagine myself doing that, I might confess too, mm-hmm. to something that I didn't do, because you just want to get out there at that point. You don't have your parents. You don't know how the legal system works. Mm-hmm. You don't know if you can say, I don't want to talk. And I'm going to use my right.
Right.
To not talk.
Well, technically, they should read you your Miranda rights and say you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you. You have the right to an attorney. But then right after that, the police say, but just talk to me and I'll let you go home. Yeah. Right? So. And
they don't even tell it to everyone. And the thing is, all of their families are low income families. Mm-hmm. And they can't, for example, like you said, Raymond's dad, he's he knows his son is being interrogated, but if he doesn't go back to work, he will be fired. Mm-hmm. So therefore, he will lose all of his, income mm-hmm. to feed his family. Mm-hmm. And, there are ones I think it's Kevin, and he's raised by a single mother mm-hmm. and stuff like that. So it's all very sad just to see how these kids are pressured into confessing that they didn't do something they didn't do, because they just want to get out. Mm-hmm. And they're just brought in with the thought of they are guilty mm-hmm. already, mm-hmm. without even talking to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a very powerful scene when Antron's father comes in, who's played by Michael K. Williams, and he talks to Antron and says, Antron, listen, man, you just have to do what the police want you to do. Say what you want them to say. They'll let you out of here like they told me, but you just gotta lie. And Antron's I don't want to lie. And his father gets really mad at him, because his father, unfortunately is uneducated too about the criminal justice system, because everybody gets scared, right? When they bring you in, you just start thinking about all the scenarios of how your life can be ruined, and you just want to be free. You know what I mean? So they use that to manipulate him. And that was such a powerful scene. What did you think? It was.
And same thing happened with Raymond Santana's father. Mm-hmm. He first, his grandmother was there, and his grandmother didn't know English. And then they took her out mm-hmm. When his father came, his father was it's okay, just tell them what they need to hear. Mm-hmm. And then we can go home. Yeah. And I think Bobby McCray, Antron's dad, he was in jail too at mm-hmm. one point in his life. I think they said that. Yeah. So it's he's scared that something like that will happen to his kid. And he forces him to make a false confession. Yeah. And thinks it's going to be okay.
Yeah. I got to say this one more time. Michael K. Williams was such an intense actor, and his presence is truly missed. And his scar is so iconic too.
It is.
He has such a cool, iconic scar. Rest in peace to him, man. We need to watch more of his movies, man. I need to watch The Wire. I've never seen The Wire. Have you?
No.
Oh man, we should probably binge watch that one day. But man, so essentially, the boys are getting abused and kept in these rooms. The only one who doesn't make a statement is Yusef Salaam, because his mother rushes in at the last minute. But the police are able to get the rest of the boys to make videotapes confessing to the crime. And essentially the boys are told to make a story up, that implicates the other boys there. So some say Santana did the raping. No, it was Kevin that did the raping. Korey makes a video where he says, this was my first rape. I'll never do it again. You know what I mean? So it's kind of sad how it ends, and all the boys don't end up going home. Surprise. They all get arrested after they confess on tape, after hours of no food and interrogation. Yeah. What'd you think about that?
I think especially Korey's story was particularly sad, because basically the police draws up names of the people who were in the park that night, and they just go and arrest everyone. And Korey wasn't on that list. And when his friend Yusef gets arrested and taken by the police, they tell him like, hey, you want to come down to the precinct with your bro? And he's like, yeah, if I don't, then his mom will be mad at me. So then he basically goes to the station for his friend, and then he ends up being like the scapegoat the police choose to tie all of this up in order to blame the boys. And I think the actors here, the kid actors, they did a great job, because you can see the anxiety in those scenes where they are like crying, and they're also like telling these stories and they're stuttering. You know, they don't know what they're telling. They don't even know some of the vocabulary they're using. It's like, you know.
I want to say the best kid actress for me was the kid who played young Antron. You know what I mean? Maybe it's partially I felt bad for him because he had that big old bruise on his face from when the cops busted up his head. But Khalil Harris was the actor who played him. He did a great job.
Yeah, I liked all of them, but specifically my favorite was Kevin.
Yeah.
Because he was like so young. I feel like he was younger than the others, or at least he just looked younger.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was like this quiet kid, but also showed a lot of emotion, like with his face.
The only one that didn't have a kid actor was Korey Wise, and he played like the 16-year-old version of him, and then I believe the 26-year-old version of him, which is incredible range for an actor.
Yeah. Like they shaved him, and he became a teenager.
I know, right? That's something lucky. I was just watching this interview with Zendaya, and they asked Zendaya, like, how does it feel to constantly be asked to play a teenager? And she was like, well, you know, it has its perks. Like, you get a wide range of roles, you know what I mean? So, shout out to the young baby-face looking people out there. Make your money.
Yeah.
But, the first episode was okay. I mean, every episode is good. But let's get into episode 2. So essentially, part 2, the New York City police are shown exerting pressure on the 5 youths to confess, settling them against one another, talking to them without parents or counsel present, and struggling with evidence. The brutal assault of the jogger has increased pressure on the police to solve the crime and on the prosecutor to take it to trial and gain convictions. Suggestions are made that the timelines, conflicting accounts, and lack of substantive evidence do not support the case, but the juries convict each of the youths of most charges. So yeah, basically that episode opens up with like, you know, the backlash from the city and the media, right? Like they show these reporters writing the story like the youths were in the park wilding like a pack of animals. Their enemies were rich. Their enemies were white, right? And Donald Trump is on TV talking about, you know, I believe that we should bring back the death penalty for these animals, right? And he puts like a page ad in the New York Times. And we see the rest of the city is like sort of like taking sides, like the black community and brown community. They're rallying around the kids talking about protect black youth, right? And the other side are like lock them up, they're animals, you know what I mean? So there's like a real divide in the city. We also, you know, see more of the attorney, the prosecutor who's prosecuting the case, Elizabeth Lederer, who's played by Vera Farmiga, and she's sort of like on the fence about the case, right? Because she's like, you know, we don't have evidence, we don't have DNA, the stories don't match up here, and she has to like, you know, talk with Linda Fairstein to get convinced to take on the prosecution. What did you think about any of those scenes?
I really like the parts where they show the city and the people are listening to the news. And it's like, you know, they show the Chinese man at the Chinese store, and then they show like the black pastor who's walking, you know, and stuff like that. And it's like, you know, everyone is sort of anticipating what's going to happen. And I just wish, you know, I don't know if it would have made anything, but I just wish like this lawyer, Elizabeth Lederer, she didn't end up taking the case or something, because she knew something was wrong. But this like Linda Farstein's character, she's like constantly guilting her into like feminism. And, you know, she's always saying like, think about this lady who got raped. How can you do this to her? How can you abandon her like this? Find a way to just make him feel guilty and make them look guilty. So yeah, that was just, I felt like Linda Farstein was running that like precinct or something.
Yeah, essentially.
You know?
Yeah, when they showed the scenes of the people listening to the news about this story, it made me think about how we listen to the news now. And like some of us take in these stories and we tend to just believe them on face value. You know what I mean? When it could be later, right, that person is found innocent, right? Like I think about Michael Jackson, right? When the news came out that he was charged with sleeping with little boys and stuff like that, a lot of people soaked that in and just believed it, right? Even though Michael Jackson went to trial for it, I believe 2 times, and was found not guilty, right? People still accuse him and put that label on him because they heard it in the news or they've heard it in media so many times. No,
that's true. I mean, that's why, like, I'm going to give a bad example, but, like, the things that went down with, like, Diddy, for example, there is a lot of evidence against him. But at the same time, like, I can never say that he's 100% guilty because there's always going to be that, like, 5% chance that all of this was manipulated on him. And that I don't think that makes me, like, anti-feminist or, you know, like, what happened to the woman that he affected. I'm not saying that. Of course, they deserve justice, but they just deserve, you know, true justice. And for now, you know, I 90% believe that he's guilty, but there's always going to be that doubt in my head, like, was he set up, you know, by the system or by, you know, any of the women and stuff like that.
Right. And the thing about our system in America is like we have a pretty interesting and unique system with the jury, but sometimes the jury gets it wrong, as they did in this case, right? And so even though, like, we might hear a story and, you know, we assume Diddy is guilty or we assume Diddy is innocent and he goes to trial and he's found guilty or innocent, right? 1 or 2 of those things could be wrong. He could be guilty and found innocent, and that's wrong. He could be innocent and found guilty, and that's wrong. Like, we have a very, you know, we can't always believe either or side. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's that. I've always said that Diddy should be freed, not because I think he's innocent, but because I think if you're going to have a white supremacist, literal rapist in the White House, and the black man is in jail for generally the same crimes, that's not justice. I think justice sometimes goes beyond. It should be about parity, right? If we let white folks run around raping people, grabbing pussies, and inserting fingers in women in department stores without their consent, then Diddy should cover himself in baby oil and slide on whoever he wants. You get what I'm saying?
Wow, yeah. Yeah, because that is also another part of, you know, equality. And, you know, that's something that doesn't exist right now.
Yeah, but I'm sorry for going off on that rant.
No, it's okay. I mean, I just wanted to emphasize that there should be reasonable doubt all the time. But, yeah, like how you described the justice system, I feel like it depends on the public image a lot and also, like, how your lawyers defend you.
Yeah.
Rather than the truth itself.
Right. And also how that jury is set up, right? Because a lot of the times, like the case of the Scottsboro boys and many other black men who have gone before the jury, what is the jury?
White.
All white.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be a jury of your peers, right? But we live in this racist society where a bunch of racist white men and women judge black men's lives all the time, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting. Another thing, you know, that happens in this episode 2, is that we see the boys get separated because Korey Wise is 16. You know, he gets sent to like adult holding jail, right? And the other boys, they get sent to like juvie, right? And the other boys, they're in juvie and they're meeting each other for like the first time. Like they meet Santana. Santana meets Kevin and is like, "You're Kevin? You're Santana? Man, I just said you raped somebody." Like they literally did not even know each other when they were making the videotapes. What did you think about those scenes?
Yeah, that scene was like very touching when they meet and they like Kevin starts confessing about what he told, and all of them are like, "Me too, like I lied on you as well." Yeah. And it's very touching because they sort of have no hard feelings against each other because they all know the situation, and they're all like, "I get it because I've been through the same thing and did the same thing." And when it comes to Korey being separated, it's very sad because he's still like a kid. Like he was friends with Yusef, who's going to juvie, and you know, I feel like, I mean, that's when I thought, okay, legal drinking age is like 21 or 18 in America,
yeah,
but
21,
and if you're 16 and commit a crime, you go to an adult prison.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does that make sense?
Yeah.
And,
I mean, there are some, we spoke about this last night. I mean, there are some crimes that are so heinous, like maybe a child should be, you know, locked up longer. But I don't know about putting a 16-year-old in jail with a 30, 40-year-old man. You know what I mean?
Especially with like a sexual assault charge,
a
rape charge.
Yeah.
And we see that later on, like how Korey is treated in prison.
And by the way, you know, this might be a side tangent, but when we think about Korey being a 16-year-old in a male adult prison, we all say that's wrong, right? Especially when you see the kid.
Yeah.
Right now in the U.S., they're talking about putting trans women in jail with men, right? In federal prison, because Trump came in office and he doesn't believe trans people exist or should have rights. So think about that. A person who looks like a woman, genders himself as a woman, presents as a woman, being enthroned in jail with a bunch of adult men. You know what I mean? Hardened criminals, you know? Think about that as well, as you're also watching When They See Us, right? Because I'm pretty sure the people that will watch this would say that's not right for Korey to go to jail.
Yeah.
Also, you have to have some heart and some common sense to think, would I put somebody with titties and a BBL in jail with a bunch of men? You know what I mean? Just because they have a penis. You know what I'm saying?
That would be, I can only just slightly imagine the cases that could come up in that situation, and it's scary.
Yeah, a bunch of people are going to die.
Yeah.
Literally, people will die because of this.
You're just risking people's life on top of prisoning them.
Right. I know that's going to piss off somebody who's listening because, you know, hating trans people is cool right now. But we don't do that on this channel. And when we learn about these stories of injustice, we should also expand it as well. Because we don't just want justice for us as black men. We want justice for all people. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But go ahead.
That's it.
Oh, that's it. Sorry.
I mean, I sympathize with that cause. Like, kids shouldn't be put to jail. I know last night you told me, like, they do that because before, like, in gangs, they used to, you know, make children do some of the crimes so that they would get out when they're 18. Mm-hmm. But it's like, okay, then put the kid in juvie until 18 and then transfer it to the adult prison. Like, why would you put him straight to adult prison? Yeah. That's insane. And that just, like, makes him an automatic victim in prison.
Yeah. But, you know, going now to the scenes when the boys are getting their lawyers, like some of their lawyers are not, you know, professional at all. Like one of their lawyers is like a divorce lawyer. The other one is like a real amateurish, like accident attorney. And I believe only Antron has like a really good, you know, lawyer, like a good white man who comes in and uses white male energy.
Yeah. Mickey.
Mickey, right? So he's a great lawyer. And, but some of the boys, like, they're just not, you know, going to get the best defense. But when they actually go to trial with it, you know, they actually put up a good fight. Some of the trials are separated. So I believe, you know, Antron and Kevin and Raymond Santana, they're all on trial together. And the other two are put on trial, like Korey and Yusef, like they're on trial together or something like that, right? That's because, like, there's this law in New York City where you can't just have mass trials where everybody's like implicating each other, so they separate it, right? Also, some of the parents don't like each other. Like Yusef's mom doesn't like Korey's mom because I believe, you know, Yusef's mom thinks that Korey got him into this, right? Yeah. And, you know, there's a bit of class, I believe, too, difference because I think Yusef's mom is a bit more educated and maybe has a better job, I think.
And she has like a community behind her too. Yeah. Because she's like Muslim, and I feel like Black Muslim community really helped like the family throughout like the journey a little bit.
They were more tight knit.
Yeah, and plus she, like, you know, she's the only one that protected her kid. And Yusef ended up not signing, you know, the allegations.
Right. And by the way, I don't want to say she's the only one who protected her kid. She's the only one that could, right? Yeah, she's the only one that got in at time.
Yeah, exactly. So she's like requesting a separate trial from all of them because they don't have Yusef's signature on everything that he said, and they have the others' signature.
Right. But you know, that meeting with the lawyers and all the parents together and family, you know, that was very interesting to see, like, how people want to protect only really their kid. You know what I mean? Like, there is this idea, like, oh, it's all about community, and all these boys are being targeted because they're young and black and male. But it's, at the end of the day, mama's like, my baby's innocent. And
well, I mean, how would you act? You know, if your kid was facing 14, 20 years of prison, what are you going to do? Like, you have to protect your kid first, and then, if you can, then you protect others.
Right. No, definitely it would be about self-preservation then. I can definitely see where the parents are coming from, but it's, you know, interesting because they all realize that it is an injustice. But it's all about, if I can get Yusef out and Korey stays in, I think Yusef's mother would have been like, that's fine with me. I got my baby, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely, like, when we're introduced to the lawyers, there's like the scene where we see Elizabeth Letter, who's defending Trisha Miley, right? And basically a guy that helps her comes in and he says, like, this is a piece of cake, because their lawyers are just, like, you know, really bad. Yeah, amateurs. And you can see, like, the economic difference between, like, the state and the families. And and Elizabeth Letter says, you know, don't take them too lightheartedly, because you know they want to become famous through this case, and that will drive them. But in reality, like, they are just concerned about getting their children home. And like, even from the first lawyers meeting, there is an air of, you know, depression, because they know that the state is racist. And
basically it's like they're 9 times out of 10, the state sides with the prosecution, right? And they all got sent to, like, Rikers Island, and that's going to go in front of this specific judge who always, you know, sides with the state. So,
but you know, they're still committed to the fight,
right? But
I feel like they were not forgetting the high possibility of the children going to jail.
They weren't forgetting that, because, you know, this has happened many a times in American history, right? I thought somewhere in this film somebody was going to mention, like, the Scottsboro boys or random lynchings of black men that have happened numerous times throughout history for similar accusations of crimes, but that didn't really come up. I think that might be one of my issues with the film, because I think that would have been, you know, at the front of a lot of people's minds, you know, saying this is a high-tech lynching, you know, this is a modern, you know, witch hunt for rapist black men. You know, America's ritual every few years is to have their kids kill each other in school and hunt black men for raping white women, right? Like, that's America's, you know, sports, you know what I mean?
So, I mean, it's important to highlight that this is not a singular case. And this has happened throughout history in different places, different contexts, different numbers, different ages, but the same sentiment, you know, happened. But I mean, I like this episode because I feel like it shows a look into the families a lot as well, and like how the parents basically, you know, some of them were able to get bail, but some of them couldn't afford it. And you see those parents, like, coming back home and just thinking about this constantly. So throughout I think in the third episode and the last episode also, it shows that, but this type of thing doesn't only affect the kid or that person. It affects everything about their lives, their families, their future, their past, like, you know, I think the movie, that's why I said it's comprehensive, in the sense that it shows very deep effects of, you know, the criminal justice system in America, right? And how exploitative it is. Going now to the trial scenes, you know, mostly we see the trial with the 3 boys, right? I believe Antron, Kevin, and Raymond Santana, right? We see mostly that one, and how their lawyers are fighting against Elizabeth Lederer and the prosecution bringing their case. And, you know, the prosecution gives an impassioned speech like, these boys are rapists. They chased this woman down and beat her. And you'll see the video evidence where they confess to the crime. And the defense, mostly led by, you know, Antron's white lawyer, he mostly is giving like a very impassioned speech, like these boys were coerced. You'll notice that these 14-year-old boys didn't have any sort of legal counsel or their parents with them. And basically this case is a sham because there's no DNA evidence linking them to the crime. The other lawyers who represent the boys, there's like this big fat Hispanic lawyer representing Raymond Santana who does Peter Rivera.
Yeah, Peter Rivera. Like, he does a very piss poor job, like walking up in this very large suit suit, acting like he's doing something. Blair Underwood plays the representative for, I believe, I forgot, maybe Kevin or something like that. He does a good job. Blair Underwood is an all-star actor. Shout out to him. He's dope. And even though he's a divorce attorney, he does like an impassioned speech to the jury. You know, they call up police, they call up witnesses, they call up expert counsel and stuff like that. And, you know, there's parts in the trial where you think, oh, these boys are going to get off. Like, you know, the people in the crowd are like celebrating, like, yeah, there's no DNA. Yeah, it's inconclusive and stuff like that. And then there's parts where they mess up, you know, really bad. Like when I believe Antron's father goes on the stand and essentially says, like, you know, the police told us that we would go home or that we would be free if we just lied to them. So I told my son to lie. And the prosecution says, like, would you tell your son to lie to protect his family? And I'm like, that's a deep philosophical question. That's too much. And so, yeah, that essentially, yeah, they get found guilty after they play the tapes in you know, in the jury hall, you know, for them, right?
Yeah.
But what did you think about any of the trial scenes?
Yeah, I felt like before they played the tapes, the boys were like, you know, kind of in a positive direction because the arguments that their lawyers were giving made sense. Like, you know, nothing matches. The kids are wronging the kids are like pinning out the wrong place on the map in Central Park, like a total opposite, far away from where actually rape happened. And like, I think, like you said, I think it's either like Kevin's lawyer or Antron's lawyer. Like, he was hitting it with the racial point, like saying that this was racially motivated and the cops were, you know, racially motivated in blaming these kids. And it was kind of going good. And there was even like a time where Raymond Santana's lawyer, he was sort of inactive in the beginning. And he felt like he already didn't have any hope of them winning. But, you know, when they basically find a sock with semen inside in the park, and they discover that the DNA doesn't match with any of the boys. And after that, like, he has some hope. He's saying, like, oh, we don't even have, like, any scientific evidence and stuff like that. But when they play the tapes, that's when shit gets
it gets
up.
really bad.
Yeah.
You know, there were some parts that were touching, you know, in the trial. Like, I believe Antron goes up to Raymond Santana, and I believe even though they weren't friends before, Antron comes up to Raymond and says, hey, man, let's steal a car, let's take out a guard, and we can drive to Mexico, you know what I mean? Like, we could escape. Raymond didn't have bail, so he ends up going to jail every day after trial. So, yeah, it also showed, like, you know, these boys are really going through hell, and Raymond says, like, you know, I just want to go home. I wanted nothing more than just to go home, right? And, you know, I was thinking this, and I had to check myself. This show is called When They See Us, because when they see us, they see monsters. They see men. They don't see children. And while I was watching them in trial, even though these boys are, like, wearing suits, like Antron looks fire, like a grown man, Kevin as well in his suit, I had to remember, that's a 14-year-old boy, or that should be played. The character is 14, right? And it's like we're socialized in this world to not see black children as children. We're socialized to see them as men. You know what I mean? As grown-up adults who can, you know, afflict pain on other people. And I think partially that comes from, like, slavery. Like, you know, they did kidnap children and make them work. Like, when we think about slavery, we think it's grown men. No, it was really, like, child slavery out there, right? And I think that's because we were, you know, we see young boys as, you know, able to go out there and work, you know? But any comments?
Yeah, I was thinking of the same kind of thing because I thought while they're accusing these kids of rape, I'm pretty sure they're all virgins. Because that's the vibe they give. Maybe not Korey because he had a girlfriend. But even, like, with his girlfriend, their relationship seemed very innocent. And still they were 16. So I feel like these kids are, like, can't they do some sort of, like, virginity test? I guess you can't do that.
No, for boys. Exactly, right?
Yeah, but that's the fucked up thing. Like, I was thinking about that. And I was thinking, like, bro, like, they're about to go to prison for raping a woman when they're virgins. Yeah. Like, that makes no sense.
Never even seen a pussy.
Yeah. And, it was heartbreaking, like, to see those scenes. There was one scene where Kevin, Raymond, and Yusef, they were like in the trial waiting room, and like Kevin breaks down and Raymond hugs him, and then Yusef hugs them. It's like a group hug.
Yeah.
And all of that. And meanwhile, like, Korey is in adult prison.
Yeah. Which is tough, man. That's so hard to imagine, right? Yeah. Going back to Antron's father, right? Antron's father is pretty much like the only male other than Raymond, right? Raymond has like a single father, but Antron has a mom and a father, right? But his father is like working extra shifts at his job to like pay the bills, to help pay for his like legal fund and stuff like that. And his father isn't also coming to trial a lot of the times, and Antron feels like kind of betrayed, that his father is not there to support him. And on the day his father does come to trial to testify about what happened in the police precinct, he sort of like fumbles it, and that causes like a major rift with Antron and his father. That was very touching and very powerful. Shout out Michael K. Williams. Any comments on those?
Yeah, we can see that he was feeling guilty because he was the person who forced Kevin to say the wrong thing, basically. I mean, he was part of it, but we also understand that he was tricked by the system and by the police at that time, and he just like can't help but feel guilty. And I feel like that was the reason why he didn't show up in the first place.
Yeah.
And it is very touching because Kevin is gonna go to prison, or at least at this point he has a possibility of going to prison, and his relationship with his father.
I think you mean Antron. Antron could go to prison.
Oh yeah, sorry. Antron could go to prison, and his relationship with his father is basically like all sorts of fucked up.
Yeah. Which is sad, man. It was very that was very touching, man. And going up on the stand in a trial, it's got to be one of the most nervous things. You know what I mean? Because those lawyers are trained to like rip everything you say apart. Like, you say, I was asleep at 9 p.m. yesterday. They would say, so where were you at 8:59? I was at home. Are you sure? Because you said you were asleep at 9. So can you be at home and asleep at the same time? Like, what? Like, wait, bitch, yes, I can, but no, I can't. So
that, and also, like, you can say a single word that could fuck up the whole thing.
Exactly. Like, they are trained.
The pressure of that.
No matter what. So, there's also this scene when Korey takes the stand, right? And he gets, really shaken up because, the prosecutor, Elizabeth, is like tearing him apart too. And, she asks him to like read something, and Korey says like, I can't read well. And he really, starts to have like a panic attack on the stand. And the judge, makes him like, commands him to read when he can't read and stuff. That was very touching as well. Any comments on that?
I felt like, that was a proof that he was tricked, because if he can't read what he's signing, then that's a proof that he didn't understand what he was being accused of, in a sense, and I just wish like they used that also for Korey.
There's hints of, in this film, Korey being autistic or something like that. What did you think about that?
I don't think he was autistic. I think he probably had a lot of trauma at that time, just caused by going into, this whole thing happening to you, first of all, and then on top of it, going into adult prison, even just for like a week or however the trial was going on for. So yeah, he was just a scared kid, and basically like Lederer presses him because of like him skipping school, and Korey gets like angsty because he's like, what does that have to do with my case that I skipped school?
What does that got to do with my case? That was a very powerful line. Like, shout out to the actor who played him. His name is Jarrell Jerome. He was also in Moonlight as well. Excellent actor, man. He's gonna have a bright future.
Yeah. So
he is having a bright future. What am I saying? Like, he's not successful already.
That scene was very powerful. Yeah. And because, like, it's sad because because he freaks out, they automatically sort of feel like he's guilty. Yeah. And
Yeah, so I just looked it up. Korey Wise says that he has a learning disability and he is hard of hearing. So I think, there is a possibility, that he does also have, maybe slight autism or something. I'm not going to look into it more. But I have to say also, I looked up and found that Korey Wise purchased a condominium overlooking Central Park, which has to be like the biggest flex in the world. You know what I mean?
Jeez, I don't know if I would do that.
Yeah, I know, right?
But that shows like growth.
That does show growth, and that also shows he is balling out of control, man. Come on now.
Well, he deserved it.
He does deserve it. But yeah, man, when they're all found guilty, I think it was Korey Wise. He was the only one who was not found guilty on all accounts, but he was found guilty of like sexual assault and like assault and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was hard to watch. All of them, basically get found guilty. And it ends very powerfully with, like, Antron playing his horn, in the street. But we don't hear the sound, and we just see the mothers crying and people falling out from the verdict, right? And that was very, very moving.
Yeah, it was. I cried at the end of the scene as well.
Yeah.
And it's just so sad to also see the parents.
Yeah.
As well as the kids because, I think it was Kevin's mom, who was like saying, we see them grow up and you think that you did a good job and then something like this happens to your kid.
Yeah.
When your kid is like Yusef Salaam, like the nerdiest Muslim boy in the neighborhood. And you're like, wait, my son is going to prison for like 10 plus years.
Yeah.
How could this happen?
How do you wrap your mind around that?
Yeah, how can you live with that? How can you continue your life? And it's something that they didn't do as well. Right.
We also, by the way, we skipped over this part, and we should say this before we get to parts 3 and 4. Patricia, the victim of the crime, takes the stand, and she like walks limping to the stand, and she can barely talk, and she has like a bit slur with her speech, and she basically says like, I remember going to work. I remember calling my friend and canceling a dinner meeting, but I don't remember anything else. You know what I mean? And everybody on the defense for the boys is like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, Yusef is like making dua to Allah, like, give this bitch memory again. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. And the judges are like, they're devastated by her condition. Mm-hmm. And she, like, the lawyer asks her, do you have any injuries? And she's like, I have double vision. I can't hear in my left ear or something like that.
And I can't smell anything.
You know, I'm limping. I can't walk properly and stuff. So it's like she doesn't even, because she doesn't remember, she doesn't even blame anyone really. Yeah. But she just doesn't remember. And that's, I guess, somehow gives
the prosecution
the power.
Yeah. Because she could say, it was one person that did this to me, or I remember the face, you know what I mean? But because she was like attacked from behind and knocked unconscious, she doesn't remember. When we've watched, like, I believe episode 1, I said, pause this. I need to look up who the victim was, because I'm endlessly fascinated by, like, what victims have to say about high profile cases, especially when people are found like not innocent, not guilty, right? You know the story of Emmett Till, right? You've heard of Emmett Till. The woman who accused Emmett Till of like winking at her or like making a lewd suggestion, she essentially lied, right? And she admitted she lied like years later, and she was never arrested for it and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And so she never felt guilty about it or anything like that, and she was able to die peacefully, with her soul sent to hell. So I'm wondering, like, how does Patricia feel about this, about the Central Park case and her role she played in it? Granted, she was a victim, but, like, does she acknowledge, like, how her white womanhood played a part in these 3 boys getting victimized by the state? You know what I mean? I was endlessly fascinated, and Patricia hasn't said much. Like, she's like a self-help guru. She's writing books. Like, she gets like minimal views. I get more views on YouTube than her. You know what I mean? Like, It's very interesting how many of the people that were a part of making this happen seem to not feel any sort of guilt at all. And I'm not saying Patricia needs to feel guilt, but any sort of like acknowledgement of their role in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I can't really blame Patricia because her whiteness her white womanhood was used as a tool to send these kids to prison. And I feel like just her telling what happened to her isn't really siding with anyone, but at the same time, I feel like, I don't know, like, you know, she just wakes up from this trauma and she finds herself in the hospital. She's probably watching the news. She has the lawyers coming to him, telling her that these kids did this to her. So it's like she doesn't even have another opinion, and all of this is being fed to her. And, you know, at that time, I don't really blame her, but, you know, it feels like we read about her life right now a little bit. She wrote a book about the whole incident called, like, I Am the Central 5 Jogger or something.
Right.
And we don't know what she exactly says.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't read the book. Who knows? She might have a long part where she talks about how she feels about these guys getting found not guilty, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, if she made a statement about, like, how these guys were unjustly prosecuted, that would be very, like, good. And if she didn't, I think she should have. But yeah, I don't blame her back then. But you know, she does need to recognize certain things now, I guess. Not because she's guilty of anything, just because she needs to recognize her privilege.
Yeah, she needs to recognize her privilege, and we all need to, because our criminal justice system is participatory, right? Like, it's not like other systems where you just have 3 judges deciding something, right? Like, people get to talk and give their testimony about what happened. The citizens get to decide who's innocent, who's guilty, right? And it's an evolving process where people should be, you know, tweaking the system, voicing concerns about the system, challenging the system. And Patricia, even though she's a victim, I feel like has a duty to say something, right? Like you just said.
It's not even a duty, because on top of everything that happened, her attacker was free out in the world, you know, attacking other women, raping other women. So it's like, even for her, from just only her perspective, she didn't get justice because, you know, her attacker was free. Right,
exactly, right? Like, she should be as angry at the system as the Central Park guys.
Exactly.
Because the real person who did this to her, you know, was free for some time until he got locked up. But yeah, he hurt somebody else.
For another crime.
Yeah, but, you know, if they actually, you know, were chasing the person who was most likely to have done this to Patricia, another woman would have not been raped and killed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that pretty much sums up episode 2, which is probably, you know, the most dense, but also there's a lot of density in 3 and 4. Let's just put 3 and 4 together because they're essentially about the same thing. So Antron, Yusef, Kevin, and Raymond struggle with being in a juvenile facility. They are eventually released after several years serving hard time, and have difficulty adjusting to life outside. And in part 4, it's all about Korey. So Korey is in an adult prison and has the most difficult experiences, choosing the difficulty of isolation cells over repeated assaults by fellow inmates, supported by the cell guards. In 2002, the actual assailant confesses. I believe his name is Matthias Reyes. His DNA matches the evidence that fit his account. The convictions of the 5 are all vacated. They file a lawsuit against the city for which they receive a settlement in 2014 of like $40 million. Their later lives, detailing marriages, work, social justice activism, and other activities, are summarized at the end. So 4 of the 5 move away from the city, ironically, like mostly all to Georgia, which I feel like is jumping from like the skillet into the fire. But yeah, they mostly all move to Atlanta, except I think Korey. And and they make their lives elsewhere and are doing like positive things, starting companies, having a bunch of kids. Like at least 5 of them have like over 5 kids. Like
Yusef Salaam has 11 kids.
Something like that, man. That's wild. They were
Antron has like 5 or 6 or something.
Oh
like
my
it's
God.
insane.
My God. I think Yusef Salaam, because he's a Muslim man, he definitely has like 3 wives.
Wow.
But yeah, so there's a lot to break down with parts 3 and 4, which we'll combine right here. But where do you want to start? Go ahead.
I just want to start by saying, like, you know, we kind of see the juvie with Antron, Yusef, Kevin, and Raymond in it. But it's like, of course, it's still bad, and there are still, like, probably, you know, scared and all of that stuff, but they get to see their families almost every week or every month or so, and that's what they really hold on to. And yeah, but I think the hardest part for me watching episode 3 was that when they come back out to the world, it's not what they expect. Like, for 7 years, they've been waiting to rejoin with their families, come back out to the real world, be free men. And now they're all men, by the way. So yeah, they wasted like their youth in prison. They come out and they get hit with like the system and the drama in their families, you know. And
now being registered like sex offenders.
Yeah,
so like there's certain places and things they can't even do. Exactly. Certain jobs they can't work.
They struggle finding jobs. They have this like, you know, label on them that says sex offenders when they actually didn't commit the crime, but, you know, people in their neighborhood look at them weird and all that stuff, and they all say, like, at one point, I feel like the world hates me because of this tag that's like stuck on me.
Right.
And, you know, like with Raymond's case, for example, he tries to get a job, but he has all this, like, you know, things put by the state on him, and he ends up you know, being a drug dealer basically, because that's the only way he can survive, by making money. And there's also like a lot of drama within his family. His father's baby mama is like crazy. And
she doesn't like him because she thinks he's a rapist.
Yeah, basically. And like with Kevin, you know, he's struggling with his dad, and they're all working.
I think that was Antron. Was it Antron or Kevin, man? Because I have it here listed that Michael K. Williams...
Oh, it's Antron. Sorry. I always mix them up.
Yeah, Antron had, you know, problems with his dad because he comes out of jail and he still feels like his father let him down.
Yeah.
Like, by making him confess to this crime and fumbling on the stand.
Yeah.
And that was very sad, you know, because Michael K. Williams' character... You know, he becomes this old, frail man, and he's like, "Hey, Antron, I made some grits for you, boy." And Antron's just working out, like ignoring his father. And like his father left his mom when, you know, Antron got found guilty. But then when his father got sick, he ended up coming back to the family, and Antron feels like his mom is being taken advantage of and stuff like that.
Yeah. And, like, you see them deal with the world, basically. And meanwhile, I think that was, like, the cutest part of the whole series is that, like, Kevin and Yusef develop a friendship even after prison. And, you know, they go to, like, these hearings together where they have to report. And, like, still the people there are saying, like, do you accept your crimes? And they're like, we didn't do it. And, and they start... I think one of the nicest details was also how they interact with technology. I don't know if you like.
I didn't notice.
Notice that, but for example, Yusuf was like sitting in the house and he's like surrounded by all these people, and he feels a bit like claustrophobic. Goes into a room, starts reading Quran or something like, and then there's a computer and he clicks on it and the screen pops up and he just looks at it. It's like weird.
Yeah, that's funny.
And like those little things, because you know they missed the entrance of internet and all that, Apple and stuff like that.
Yeah,
you know, so that was cool. Just a nice detail.
It's so crazy to be locked up all through the 90s. Because I'm imagining, like, you get locked up in 89, you come out, like, 1997 or 2000. Like, you missed, like, the Chicago Bulls having, like, a series run. You missed, you know, the Tupac and Biggie East Coast, West Coast war. You missed, like, I don't know, Jurassic Park. Like, you missed...
Those were legendary years.
You know what I mean? Like, how you missed the whole 90s. Like, that's the biggest crime that happened to the Central Park Five. They didn't get to see like Michael Jordan like three-peat. You know what I mean? Like you robbed them kids of a childhood. They never got to wear a pair of Jordan 4s.
And it was also like nice because they were starting to interact with the ladies, trying to date, and I guess like at that point maybe they were trying to have a family, get married, have kids and stuff like that, because they missed out on the dating part, like the ages where you're supposed to date. So those were cute as well, but some of them ended up sad and some of them ended up, you know, good.
I don't remember who it was, if it was Yusef or Kevin, but one of the scenes that really impacted me was like he goes to the barbershop and he sits down in the chair.
It was Yusef.
It was Yusef, okay. And, he's telling the barber, like, I'm glad to be home. And the barber's like, yeah, the community supports you, but those people, in Manhattan, they don't. So just stay up here where we love you and protect you. And Yusef is like, I want to go back to school. And he's like, I want to be a teacher. And then the guy says, not with that sex offender on your name, right? You can't do any profession with a license. Bus driver, fucking, like, I'm like, yo, I can't even be a bus driver, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and this isn't a hill I want to die on exactly, but I've said this before and I'll say it again. Like, I believe the sex offender thing, we take it a bit too extreme in America. Like, having people on a list for the rest of their life, having to report and identify themselves for the crime that they did. Sex offender applies to everybody, right? Whether you were 17 and had sex with a 15-year-old girl, or whether you're a 40-year-old man and you rape babies, both of those guys are sex offenders, and they're on lists for the rest of their lives. You know what I mean? So, I think it's not right how we do it in America, and I don't believe in forever punishment. I don't believe in forever punishment for any crime, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I agree. I think it should be dependent on the crime. Like you said, if a 40-year-old raped baby girls, then that person should be on the list, but not the drunk teenager maybe.
I even disagree with that. Like, that person, I think there's another way of having justice rather than somebody having a scarlet letter for the rest of their life.
Yeah,
you know
I mean, like I said, I believe a lot of like therapy for prisoners and also people who get out of prison in order to gain them back to the society. I feel like it's a necessary step because also, anyone can lie. If they're a psychopath and a rapist, they could lie about, feeling guilty and stuff like that, but they cannot all the time fool a psychologist. It's harder. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's harder to, do that when you're having psychotherapy.
Right.
But anyway, and like you said, I was like, I felt so bad at that scene when Raymond, they told Raymond that he's supposed to report every 90 days to this facility. I'm like, wow, okay, this man cannot ever leave where he lives.
Yeah. I've been on probation before, and probation is such a bitch because, number one, it depends on your PO. Like, if your probation officer is actually like, they look at you kind of like human, or if they look at your case and say, oh, this is a monster, this is an animal, ankle bracelet for you, I'm going to do random checkups on you, and if you're not at home, I could have you in jail. One time I had my probation officer, I believe, went on like a break, so I had like a substitute probation officer, if that's even possible, right? And so one time I was coming back home after like getting some food or something, like, and I was working at the time too, and I get this phone call that I missed. I call back, and it's this other lady who's my probation officer, and she's like, where were you? I popped up at your house and you weren't there. And I'm like, what who is this? And she's like, I'm your new probation officer and you need to be home at exactly 9 p.m. And I'm like, okay, this hasn't been how my probation has been before at all. And she's like, I could have you locked up in jail today. And I'm like, what? But I'm home now. She says, you home now? And I'm like, yeah. And she says, and hangs up on me. And I'm like, yo, that was the most wildest, aggressive, gangsta-ass phone call. I'm like, this lady came out of nowhere, you know what I mean? So, yeah, like, it's crazy how the system works. You want to say anything?
It's just crazy. For me, like, the thing is, I get the system and it's corrupted and it's, like, against, people who have been in prison before, especially sex offenders and stuff like that, but I would expect a bit more grace from the people who actually work for the system because they should know the best. That system breaks apart families. Systems put people back in jail.
Yeah.
And I feel like, more POs should be, a bit more chill.
Yeah. Also, another thing I gotta say is like what they do in the show is just a little bit talk about the financial exploitation that happens in prison. I believe it was either Kevin or Antron's mama who says like just to call my son is $23. You know what I mean?
And that's back in like 90s
money, but even still, that's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And I remember, after my case, whether you take a deal or whether you go to trial, you pay for your case, right? So the criminal has to pay restitution to the state, to the victim, right? And so every month, like, the families are paying $40, $50, $100, right? For taking it to trial, because that all lands on the victim. Like, the taxpayer ain't going to pay for that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I remember having to get on my JPay, which is like this website, and you pay every month to get your case done. You know what I mean? And if you don't pay, you fail to pay, you get your ass locked up.
How much did you pay?
I think I paid like $40 a month for like the next 2 years for my case.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it became like it became like a real bill, and that's the first bill that you pay. You know what I mean?
That's insane.
So yeah, it was it's not. I wish they talked about that too, because I'm pretty sure these guys had to pay, money for their cases. On top of that, they're lawyers. Some states make you pay for your imprisonment. So while you're in jail, it's $20 a day.
Yeah,
that you should pay.
They talk about it a little bit. I think with Korey, it was there. Like, Korey basically to keep himself safe and to bribe the guards and stuff.
Yeah.
He needs to buy something. Like, he needs money, and then he asks money from his mother, and his mother is like, I don't have anything to give it to you, but I can try. It's like, and then she says, like, when she's talking to her friends, she says, I'm still paying for this case.
Yeah.
Like, after it's the 10th year of Korey being in prison.
Not only do you have to pay for your case, but like Korey was asking his mom for money for commissary, which is like you go to the place and toothbrush, toothpaste, toilet paper, those things aren't given to you for free.
That's
you gotta buy it in jail. That's America, baby. Everything's a business.
I'm not exactly sure how it is in Turkey, but I feel like they give you the basic stuff, and then, like snacks and stuff that you want. Maybe that's extra. But I feel like they should give you a toothbrush, shampoo, whatever,
Yeah. But one of my favorite scenes here was when, we see Raymond Santana, like, grow up in jail, and he's, like, on the phone with his pops and, like, through the years and stuff like that. And then they start playing the beat to Dead Prez's Happiness, one of my favorite songs from one of my favorite albums of all time. And the way it hit was so hard. I just love Dead Prez. Shout out to Dead Prez. Shout out to whoever did the music for this, because there's so many, like, dope songs in here. And picking a Dead Prez deep album cut for that scene was so... God, it was good. Shout out Dead Prez, man. I heard they're dropping another album. First, I'm going to be the first person copping it.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of music from the 90s.
A lot of music from the 90s and just good-ass hip-hop, man.
Yeah.
Some good album cut choices. You feel me?
Okay, well... let's go, I guess, to Korey a little bit.
Yeah.
Because the last episode is about him, and he's the guy who got sent to adult prison straight on. Well,
I'm sorry. Can we just do real quick Santana and his relationship with his girl?
Yeah.
Because I thought that was interesting, too, because, like...
Tanya.
Yeah, so, Raymond Santana, he comes back home and he's living with his pops, who's got his new wife and a bunch of kids living in his house, right? And, he has conflict with them, but Santana also has this girl that he was writing to before when he was in jail, but then he fell out with her because he didn't make parole or something like that. And so he reconnects with her, and he one time brings her to the house and starts, having sex with her, and his stepmom, his father's new wife, breaks in, and she says, oh, hell no. And because his stepmom is actually like a younger, spicy Latina, the woman that he's having sex with thinks like that's his girl. And she thinks like, I thought that was actually really funny. And I was like, that's such a real, true, like.
Yeah, how do you even explain that?
That's a ghetto ass story, bro. That story is so ghetto. Or the beginning of a Pornhub like clip.
Wow.
Like
mom joins in.
No, stepmom joins in like, Santana, what are you doing? Dios mío. Sorry.
The only way you can pay is to do it to me
too. I know, right? Like it just like that sounds so Pornhubby. Yeah, but I'm sorry. Like that was really because Santana, he ends up, getting a job at this warehouse, and he ends up, building with this girl and stuff like that, and he, moves in with her, and he starts dealing drugs because he gets fired at his warehouse for some reason, right? And the scene when he finally gets arrested towards the end of the show, towards the end of that episode, was so like powerful, right? Because he was like trying to get his life on track, but because of all the hurdles they put in his way as an ex-felon, right? It's it sort of like all falls down. I thought that was very, very impactful, you know?
Yeah. And it must be so hard, like, putting yourself, you know, in the same place that you wanted to escape for 7 years, but like that was your only chance.
Right.
I feel like no one, you know, would do that if they didn't have to. Like no one would risk getting into prison again if they didn't have to. But we see Raymond just struggling job after job, and he constantly gets like let go. I'm sure like it's like because he has the offense. You know, he's probably the first person that they would let go. Yeah. If they needed to.
That, and, you know, Raymond's story, you know, his relationship with his girl contrasts with, like, how I believe it was Antron. He's working, like, at this movie theater, and he meets this girl from, like, Shreveport, Louisiana, and her name is Adele, and they start dating, right? And she ends up, like, getting mad at him because, like, he doesn't spend any money on her, and she calls him, like, a felon and curses him out and calls him a rapist and stuff like that.
Because he wanted to go back to school. Yeah. And he was saving money for that.
Yeah. What did you think about the difference in the two girls? Like, the one girl that accepted Santana for his crime and the other girl who was, like, you know, basically all this time really looking down on Antron for being a convicted felon.
I mean, I just feel like Tanya was that girl that was following up on what was going on with this Central Park 5, you know, people. So I feel like because she started writing to him in prison, she already believed that he was innocent. And for with the other girl, with Antron, I feel like yeah, she didn't really believe he was innocent, you know? So whenever it was something that, you know, she didn't want or she didn't get enough of, she just, like, used that and put the blame on him. Yeah. Yeah. And plus, I don't know, it felt like Tanya was at school. I don't know if you felt like that as well. But I feel like there was one scene where Raymond meets with Tanya, and I feel like they're in a campus or something.
Yeah, something like that, right? Which is insane, because I don't think he's allowed to be on campus. He's breaking all types of rules.
Yeah, or I don't know. I think there was something where Tanya was talking about paying, like, her student debts or something like that. And then when we look at the other girl, you know, she's from the South, and she probably has a certain background, and she's working at a cinema theater making popcorn. So that could also be like, you know, the difference, educational difference maybe.
Yeah, maybe, you know, one didn't know and the other one knew and was like, you know, you're innocent, I accept you, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it was very, very interesting. Sorry, I just wanted to talk about that because I thought, you know, Raymond's story is just so ghetto and hilarious. Like, that could be a whole drama. Like that, like Raymond Santana's story, the musical.
Wow, the musical, not the musical.
I can see it. But yeah, go on and talk about part 4 of Korey's story if you want.
Basically, you know, we go back and we see the time where Korey was first admitted to adult prison, and we see how, like, scared he is. Like, when the first time, you know, they pat him down, they ask them to get naked, and he's with a bunch of adult men. And when he's in prison, he's trying not to get in anybody's business, because he's just trying to be safe. He's scared as fuck. And we see, like, his cell. There's a huge rat in his cell. Like, there's no hygiene at all. Yeah. And people, like, just one day, you know, 2 prisoners come into the room, and everyone leaves, and they beat him up really bad.
And the guard is, like, there watching.
The guard is in on it. And the guard is constantly saying to Korey, like, if you can do something for me, let me know. And Korey doesn't even understand that, because he's like, what the hell is he talking about? What can I do for him as a kid in prison? So yeah, and then basically he gets beat up real bad. He goes to the infirmary, and even in the infirmary, he's like asking for help from the nurse, and the nurse is being watched by the guard. The guard's name is Simon, by the way.
No. I don't know how you're gonna. His name was Simone. Wow.
Anyway, yeah, like, the nurse can't help him either. And yeah, basically I think one day Korey gives the guard some chocolate as a pay to protect him. And the police says, like, next time anything like that happens, because it's gonna happen, just ask for solitary instead of infirmary, because infirmary is for snitches,
right? Yeah.
And basically, after that, Korey does end up getting like attacked, and he asks for solitary, and we see him in solitary just like kind of losing his mind, and he becomes friends with this one guard that kind of helps him, like brings him somewhat food, and we see him struggling alone.
Well, that was after like he transferred, right? Because he's transferring from like Attica to like another prison because he doesn't feel safe. He gets beat up when he transfers there, goes into solitary, and then makes friends with that other guard.
Okay. But yeah, and meantime, like he sees his mother not very often because his mother can't afford to come all the time and stuff. And his mother is like Dolores. And she's trying to help him like we talked about earlier, but she's not a wealthy woman. She's a single mom, so she can't really help him that much. And he asks for a transfer, like you said, and he gets in trouble again, gets beat up by like some guys really bad, and then that's when they put him to solitary. And we see him struggle in the solitary.
Also in solitary, we get the flashback of him and his mom and his sister, who was technically born his brother, and his name was Norman, but he ended up changing his name to Marcy. And Marcy is played by Isis King, who is also one of the most visible, transgender people. I believe it was the first transgender person on America's Next Top Model. And she does an excellent job playing like Korey's sister. And we see the background, and basically Korey's mom kicked out Norman because Norman wanted to be Marcy. But Marcy always like looked out for Korey and told him like go to school and you need to stop being outside and stuff like that. And, Marcy ends up, like, getting killed while Korey is in jail. And that causes him to, like, have a breakdown. Any comments on that?
Yeah, that was a very touching story. And it's basically, like, all Korey has is his memories. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But it feels like, when he's in solitary, we constantly hear these voices of, like, him talking to Yusef, him talking to his mom. And, all these memories are coming back to him, and that's like the only thing he can do because he's in four walls with nothing else to occupy him. And it kind of showed that he already had somewhat of a hard life because I think we also learned that his mom used to deal dope.
Sell crack out the back of the windows.
So it's like we already know that this kid was actually going through a lot before even ended up, in prison. And it was really sad because then we saw like that moment with his brother or his sister, I guess, when they were younger, and he starts talking to his sister hallucinating, and that's one of the things I feel like that kept him somewhat sane. If that's such an ironic sentence. Like hallucinations kept him sane. But it was very touching.
Yeah, very, very. I think those moments where we see Korey in solitary are some of the best in the show because solitary is like something I believe like is so inhumane. But it also maybe can be a point where you can have some reflection on life and gain some understanding. I'm not saying like solitary is like useful, but in solitary we see Korey, really delve deep into himself and like, reach the bottom, and he's able to come out of that and be stronger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can, there's this man who's been locked up in jail forever. His name is Mumia Abu Jamal. And he was a political prisoner because he was a Black Panther who was accused of killing a police officer in the early 1970s. And he has been in solitary confinement since like 1974 till 2025, right? Like he is still in there.
That's
you know what I mean? And he is more than innocent. Like, people have had rallies and protests trying to get this man out, and the government continues to say no. You know what I mean? So, free Mumia Abu Jamal, and basically let's end solitary confinement because it's not worth it. But also, we see Korey have a fight with this guy named Matthias over like DMX's music video playing like in the day room, right? So they get into a bout, but then also, Matthias later catches up with Korey and is like, you know, do you believe in God, Korey? And Korey's like, you trying to convert me, bruh? And Matthias is like, no, I just want you to know God is looking out for you. And then Matthias eventually like confesses to the crimes and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you know, it's just his time is very, very hard, insanely hard, because even though he could get out of solitary, because he didn't really do anything to get into solitary to begin with, it's like he chooses to stay there because he thinks people are going to kill him because he is a sex offender in prison. So in any prison he is assigned to and he's transferred to, there are just a gang of people who are coming after him, beating him constantly, to like very, very bad conditions, like to a point where he's wheezing and he can't walk, and all of his bodies are like covered with bruises and blood. And yeah, it was very, very hard, and I felt like the series did a good job in that confinement, like capturing his psychology. Yeah. Because, yeah.
It was also hard to see how many times he got his ass whooped, because he was getting whooped everywhere, man. He was transferring from Attica, getting whooped, Wenday getting whooped, going upstate, downstate, getting his ass whooped on by everybody. Yeah. Stabbed up, too.
And also, every time, you know, he has parole meetings and there's a chance that he could get out, they ask him to confess and accept all the things that he did. Right. And he never does that. Yeah. Because he says, I'm not guilty.
You're not guilty. Not guilty. That was the most inspiring thing about this film, like how the guys held on to their innocence, literally. You know what I mean? Yeah. That they were children who were forced into this, who lost their innocence unwillingly, but they maintained it throughout. So, yeah. When Matthias, you know, starts to confess to the crimes, like his story matches up exactly. Elizabeth Lederer is like believing it at first. Linda Fairstein, you know, does not, and the police officer, you know, who charged the crime as well does not. He thinks he's just making it up. But then, you know, Matthias's DNA matches exactly, and yeah, essentially, you know, the guys get let free. There's this emotional phone call that Korey gets from his mom. She says, somebody loves you, baby. You're coming home. And then, like, essentially, you know, we see all the guys, you know, as adults, Kevin, Antron, Yusef, and Korey, and Raymond, you know, all stand together on the stage, you know, as the people cheer for the now exonerated five, who were working like different jobs. Like we catch Yusef working at Starbucks, like Kevin or Antron like sweeping the floor, you know what I mean? But they're trying to get their lives right. And Raymond is in jail, but you know, they all get exonerated for their crimes, you know, so that was amazing. And yeah, any comments on like the ending?
Yeah, I mean, you know, even though the story is extremely sad, there's somewhat of a happy ending because they are honored by their communities. And you know, there's this speech, there was this couple that were, you know, protesting against locking these kids up in the beginning, and I think they were like Raymond's they were in Raymond's community, or like they're the same community, but Raymond knew them personally. And yeah, we see her, the same, you know, activist woman, speak about what happened to them and defend them and welcoming back to their families. And we see like all the parents' faces finally, you know, even it's like, because even though some of the boys were out, like all of the boys were out except Korey, it's like they still had that sexual offender tag with them, and now that's gone too. And it's like that moment where you're like, finally, no one will hate me. Finally, you know, I proved them that I was right. And that like sort of, you know, feeling that the parents have and the kids have, that was very emotional for me. Yeah, it was,
you know, the scene when they, you know, all stand on stage, that was the only scene that really almost made me cry, to know that these men triumphed over such evil, you know what I mean? And they all stand strong. I was also about to cry when I saw Korey's outfit walking through the streets, dressed like it's still 1989 and 2002. That was very hard to watch. The man was walking around with a Bluetooth CD player. Like
he went to get fried chicken.
He went to go get fried chicken at the same place where like they were banging on the window telling him to go to the park. So yeah, I was like, oh, Korey. We got to update your fashion real quick. Okay, but you're gonna be alright. You're gonna be alright.
Yeah.
But overall, man, there's probably some. Go ahead.
Sorry. But after the whole story is wrapped up, we see the actual people.
Yeah.
Who were, you know, these Central Park Five, and we know there's like this text that talks about each of their lives. Like we said in the beginning, they had kids, they had families. Like 4 of them moved to Georgia, and Korey is in New York still. And, you know, they all did great things, kind of, because, like, one of them started a company, a fashion company. The other one started, like, this organization that's helping, you know, that's giving legal aid and stuff like that. So they all ended up making their lives again. Like, they all ended up fighting for their lives and then making great things, which was very inspirational, you know, after 14 years in prison. When you're supposed to go to school, especially.
It's amazing that some of these guys, even though they lost their youths and a good part of their early 20s as well to the criminal justice system, most of them were able to do amazing things. And I think part of that was because of the financial compensation they got, right? In 2014, you know, they were awarded $40 million. Who knows how that was divided and how much the lawyers ate and stuff like that. But that's still a good amount of change to, like, rebuild your life, if it is even possible, right? I was joking, you know, while watching this film, like, shit, I'd do 10 years in jail for $40 million, but nah, not really. I know it's a funny scenario to think about, but I would not go.
Not when you're 15. 16.
Yeah. And especially if I don't know I'm gonna get the $40 million, then nah, I don't know if I'm gonna do it. But
it's not worth it, because it's like, it's not even only, you know, 14 years.
Yeah.
It's like that tag you have as a sexual assault.
Yeah. I think we'll wrap it up here as far as talking about this series. I believe this is like a must watch for, like, you know, anybody. But also check out some other things, you know, like check out a documentary on the Scottsboro Boys. Go learn more about the history of lynchings as well. Read up on, you know, The New Jim Crow by, I forgot the author's name, but it's essentially saying, like, how the criminal justice system is essentially a new way of creating segregation in America, how it affects so many young black men. And I mean, there's so many other stories that are relevant and like this story more than we should be comfortable with, and there definitely needs to be change in the justice system, right? So, I'll give this I give it a 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
You?
Yeah, I agree with you. Everyone should go and watch it, and also like other works of Ava DuVernay as well, because she did The Origin, she did The 13.
Yeah, we reviewed Origin.
Selma. Yeah, but you know, she has great works. Oh, yeah. It's a very touching story, and I think if you watch it now, it's probably going to make you think about the system that you have in America right now, or, you know, people have in America right now, and what it could be also under Trump's administration.
Yeah, I mean,
and what it shouldn't be.
Yeah, what it shouldn't be, right?
But yeah, I would give this also a 9. Actually, a 9.5. I would give it a 9.5.
I have to say, though, let's just not also just relegate this to America, right? The whole world that we're living in right now is anti-black. There's black men not receiving justice in France, in the UK, in Germany, et cetera, et cetera. Any place, you know, where white supremacy exists, there will be injustice in the criminal justice system against black men as well. So I just got to say that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And also, I guess the last thing I will say is, like, no fight is greater than another fight, because I feel like it ends up affecting all of us. Even though I look like a white woman, racism still affects me and puts me down as a person in this world. And even though you're a black man, if a white woman is raped, that affects you in a way. And if you don't get justice for it, that affects you in a way. So like, feminism is not greater than fighting for racism, and vice versa. And it just, you know, all comes down to the actual justice, the actual fairness, the actual equality. Yeah. And it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be poured into politics.
Absolutely. Racism does affect everybody, right? By doing this, you know, by the injustice that happened to these men caused injustice to who? Patricia, right? So it affects everybody.
Yeah.
So, I think we'll wrap it up here. This was a very good episode. I enjoyed this conversation with you, Akdi.
Me too.
And hopefully we'll do more miniseries for Black History Month, more movies as well. We have some other stuff on the pipeline that we're going to get through. If you have any film requests, put it in the comments. We'll try to get to them. And peace.